So in this week's cheeky markets, we have actually seen Bitcoin break to the upside, but it didn't have enough momentum to achieve that target of 16k. So chances are that it might go down to the 8.4 and fill that futures gap. In this video, all of the altcoins are showing important reversal signals. It's gonna be interesting to see if they can actually get back some of the lost gains. In this week's crypto news, we have huge news. We not only have the US president talking about Bitcoin, but we also have some extra commentary by the Fed. We also have some important altcoin news. We have Charlie Lee talking about Litecoin, and we also have Ethereum's co-founder trashing Libra. So if you're curious about it, just chill and keep watching. Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel, and this is your host, the Cheeky Entrepreneur. So guys, it's always a pleasure to do these videos. I really enjoy doing them. In all honesty, I've been spending my entire Sundays on this. I usually work Monday to Friday, then Saturday is the only day that I really give to myself just to rest, and then on Sundays I spend most of my time either recording, editing the video, or preparing everything for Instagram, just preparing the things and all the posts for next week and all that. But having said this, guys, I really want to thank you. I know it's a small milestone, the 100 subscribers, but we're almost reaching that, and I'm very happy for that. In my previous videos, some of you have been asking for follow-up videos, and I've mentioned that it's very difficult. It's almost impossible for me to make more videos with this quality, at least because of time constraints. But I've been thinking that a possibility could be doing kind of a podcast or a live stream. Maybe if this weekly recap is on Sundays, maybe I can do one on Thursday, and you guys can actually join in and discuss the topic with me. So the idea would be having weekly topics, maybe about psychology, maybe about trading, maybe about books of trading. I don't know at this point, but would be discussing that and then follow up on the price action that I've mentioned in the weekly recap. So I don't know all the details right now. I'm still thinking about how I would execute that. In any case, I would need to finish my specialization in investment management so that I have more time and then allocate that time to create more content for you guys. So I'm gonna be leaving a poll in one of the corners, so please guys, vote if you're interested. It's really important for me. I want to measure if you are interested, if you would like to interact in this way, if you would like to have follow-ups, or maybe even talking about other topics. Please let me know, it's really appreciated. Well, in any case guys, let's jump into this week's Bitcoin technical analysis, and I just want to highlight from my last video the bullish scenario that we were talking about. If you remember and if you watched that video, you know that I said there were a lot of bullish signals, a lot of bullish signs. First of all, we had this potential flag around here. If you see, we actually broke to the upside, and I specifically mentioned two things. First, if we actually break to the upside, there's two possibilities. First would be testing this double top scenario, which it seems that we actually did. If you take a look at here, we actually went all the way, almost past a little bit beyond 13k, but we didn't have enough momentum to actually break this 62% Fibonacci retracement level, and we went back down. So we didn't have enough momentum to actually go beyond and meet the target of potentially 16k, at least in the short term. Now guys, I'm gonna still say that we still have some bullish signs there. I mean, the stochastics are still oversold, and I said it before that the stochastics sometimes are kind of they can be fakey in this time frame. I would highly suggest to take that indicator in consideration with all the other indicators and not only base your trades on that one. But having said this, I mentioned that there were a lot of bullish signs, and I mentioned particularly in my last video that even though we have all these supports, if we actually have enough momentum to the downside, then we can actually break all those supports, and then that just becomes more bearish because all support becomes new resistance. And if I talk about these supports, which support I'm talking about, first of all, very important, the daily 20 EMA I've highlighted here. I've highlighted before how this has shown extreme support. Even here you can see it went back up, back down, had support and broke to the upside. And now even if we measure that that movement, that breakout to the upside here, we can see it's around 1600, 1700, which is, the volatility is just great for trading right now. I think there's a lot of good trading opportunities to either side, in my opinion. Now I also talk about the RSI, and I specifically talk about this support box, and we saw way before that this was a very strong support, and we saw even here that the price just in the upper limit, it actually bounced up, and this is where we had this extra momentum to the upside. But now if we take a look, we're testing the lower side of that box, and this could have a lot of repercussions, because if we actually break to the downside, I'm more and more sure that we are gonna reach that 8.4k level. And I've been watching some other YouTubers, and they're starting to say the same that I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and I think the momentum and the opinion of people are actually shifting to the bearish side right now. Now, having said this, I still would like to wait for some confirmation if this candle closes below this 20 EMA, and then potentially we go back and test it and find actual resistance. Then that case could be potentially dramatic to the downside. The same goes with this. If we actually break to the downside, we could find a lot of momentum, continue going down. I just want to go to the futures again, to the futures charts, guys. This is what I've been recalling a lot of times. Now the price is around 10,700. let's see, it should be around let's say around here. And the reason I'm mentioning this, because there's a possibility that if we continue going down for Sunday, we are actually gonna create one gap around here. And this is very important, because what I believe it's gonna happen is actually we're gonna continue going down. We're gonna fill this gap that I have been mentioning for a long time, and then we would actually have another gap up here. So whenever we find support, if it's in the 8.4 or if it's lower, then we could potentially head back up. So then there's a very lucrative trade to the upside. And now, guys, just as usual, I want to take a deeper look at the price action heading into the 4-hourly charts, and I just want to briefly talk about what I said in the last video, because I did mention this potential descending triangle around here, and we can see that this descending triangle actually didn't form, but at the same time I mentioned the potential of the flag, and at this point it's only about the probabilities, because it really is about the probabilities, and this was only one of the potential outcomes, because we could have another outcome to the downside. But having said this, it was very interesting, and this was a very good trade. Unfortunately I didn't take it, because as you know, I'm already leveraged on altcoins, and I'm gonna be trading that, and I don't want to over leverage my positions. I've said it before, it's very important to do proper risk management. But in any case, guys, what we see here, it's a rising wedge, as you can see, and this was a very good trade. If you would have shorted around here when this was forming, it was a very good risk reward trade. It actually broke to the downside, and now what we can see is that we actually found support at the lower part of this box. We went back up and then found resistance, and this was a very good trade, because once we found resistance in there, the chances are that we are actually gonna break to the downside, and that's what actually happened. Now, before continuing, there's still two things I want to talk about. The first thing is the RSI. I did mention that we're having this resistance. We saw some resistance from that line, and we actually broke at around this price, and this is where we found enough momentum to actually go up. Then we see that we went back down, found some strong support from the RSI in this, and then we continue moving back up, and then again we found a bearish divergence in here. Then we found this rising wedge, and that's enough signals to actually trigger a short. Then we saw that we could still find support in here, but it wasn't the case. We break to the downside, and now we have again a very strong resistance in there. Also, from a lot of YouTube channels that I've seen, they pointing out that we are now heading back down to the 8.5, and of course they say that 8.5 because of the future gaps. I actually think that we're gonna go a little bit lower at the very least, and the reason is because the real support is around the 8.4 support box that we have highlighted before. And I've highlighted this box, this support box, in yellow, or let's say gold, because it's a very important trading zone. We have seen a lot of resistance way before. Around here we saw that the price actually broke to the upside, then we found some support in here, then it broke again to the downside, and then we found again some resistance around here. So it's a very important trading zone, and that's what I've been saying, that if we actually break to the downside and we cross all of these supports, if we find a support around here, then we could potentially have a good setup to actually trade to the upside. But now guys, I actually want to talk about altcoins, and the reason is because there are a lot of signals pointing for a reversal, and if this happen, they could really earn back some of the momentum that they lost while Bitcoin regained that strength here in the Bitcoin dominance chart. So I just want to go through some of these signals. First of all, as you will see, we could potentially be forming something similar to a rising wedge, and if we take a look at the RSI, we're actually forming bearish divergence. We had one peak in here, second peak in here, and a third peak around here. And that's not the only indicator. We also see the stochastic that is practically overbought in here, and this could potentially mean that the Bitcoin dominance is losing momentum to the upside. So we could potentially see some altcoins benefiting of this if this actually go back down. And now I'm really mentioning if we actually go back down, because here I mentioned this strong support at well, now it seems as support at 67.5%. We actually broke up, and then now after going back down, it seems that we're finding some support in there, and this is one of the reasons that I'm still thinking if we can't break back down, then we might still see some of these altcoins suffering, but it seems that the signs are there and potentially a reversal is coming. And now what I want to really point out is that this pattern is in every other altcoin, so you can see this a macro now a macroeconomic thing. We go Ethereum, same thing, descending wedge, very bullish divergence in this case. We have stochastics oversold. We go to XRP, same setup. Here descending wedge, we have as well an oversold stochastics, bearish divergence. And if we go through all the altcoins, pretty much Litecoin, same thing. If you take a look in there, the same thing for Tron, again this descending wedge, stochastic and RSI. And even if we go to Cardano, we will see the same thing. And to be honest, here the thing is thinking, okay, if we actually break to the upside, then where can the tricky question is, when can we actually potentially take profits? Where could they actually go? Because we see that sometimes they are very volatile, and they could go all the way for 50% gains, all the way to 100 to 150, and it's very difficult to really know where they're going if they break to the upside. And now I've mentioned all of these altcoins because you can actually trade them on BitMex in Bitcoin terms, and as I mentioned, I'm actually leveraged. I'm trading Cardano, Tron, and also XRP, and I'm really taking a look at where we can actually go from there, because if we actually break this descending wedge, I think we could potentially find enough momentum. And to be honest, I'm gonna be following both oscillators, both the stochastic RSI and the RSI, to see if they actually if this happens, to see when they're actually getting overbought, and then potentially take profits from there. Well, in any case guys, let's just head into the crypto week news, because there's a lot and they are very interesting. Trump tweeting about Bitcoin is achievement unlocked, says Coinbase CEO. Donald Trump saying he's not a fan of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is huge for the industry. The fact that he felt the need to bash Bitcoin publicly fits the narrative that it is both independent of global powers and unable to be crushed by them. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong stated, "Achievement unlocked. I dreamt about a sitting US president needing to respond to growing cryptocurrency usage years ago. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We just made it to step 3, y'all," he tweeted. Armstrong exemplified the buoyant mood among Bitcoiners. Others likewise thanked Trump for the free publicity, noting a surge in interest documented by Google Trends, while the president being wrong in his opinion also became a talking point on social media. Fed chairman, no one uses it. Bitcoin a speculative asset like gold. The chairman of the United States Federal Reserve has said that a globally adopted cryptocurrency system could conceivably remove the need for reserve currencies. I think things like that are possible, but we really haven't seen widespread adoption. Bitcoin is a good example. Almost no one uses it for payments. It's a speculative store of value like gold. Powell acknowledged that the prospect of cryptocurrencies coming to replace reserve currencies has been implied since their inception and that its realization could see the global financial system profoundly transformed. People have been talking about this since cryptocurrencies emerged, but we haven't seen it. That's not to say we won't, and if we do, then yes, you could see a return to an era in the United States where we had many different currencies in the so-called national banking era. And guys, to be honest, the only thing that I want to say about this is that this is huge, like Trump says. Let's just be honest, guys, there's nothing such as bad publicity. There's just awareness, spread awareness in this case. And to be honest, it's just amazing that the President of the United States of America talked about Bitcoin. I can't say how bullish is that, and the reason is because everyone who did not know anything about cryptocurrencies, I am sure that now at the very least they have heard about that. And to be honest, this is not really gonna bring mass adoption right away, but it's gonna at the very least put that seed, let's say, into people's mind, because now people that heard about Bitcoin and they didn't know about it, they're gonna make the research, and now we can see Google Trends spiked with Trump's tweet. And once that people really appreciate what Bitcoin really is and its huge properties, for instance, we already talked about how frictionless payments work. You can send money anywhere and no one can prohibit that or take that away from you. It's decentralized, it's secure. So these are very, very good properties, and once that people are really aware of this, they will that's when the mass adoption is gonna start. Because come on people, when they see that Bitcoin has a limited supply, when they see Bitcoin is not really an inflationary system just like the Federal Reserve, just like any other fiat currency, when it gets devaluated over time, people are really gonna appreciate Bitcoin. Charlie Lee, next month's halving will be a shock to Litecoin mining. Litecoin creator Charlie Lee has predicted that miners may shut up shop after the coin's upcoming halving this summer. When the mining rewards get cut in half, some miners will not be profitable and they will shut off their machine. If a big percentage does that, then blocks will slow down for some time. For Litecoin, it's 3.5 days before the next change, so possibly like 7 days of slower blocks. And then after that, the difficulty will readjust and everything will be fine. In terms of the price, the halving should be priced in because everyone knows about it since the beginning. But the thing is that people kind of expect the price to go up, so a lot of people are buying in because they expect that the price to go up, and that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So because they're buying in, the price does actually go up. And guys, I've talked about this before about Litecoin, and I've talked even before I said that I was shorting it when it rallied up dramatically, and the reason is because there's a big difference between a future supply and actual demand. Ethereum co-founder Mihai Alisi concerned over Libra centralization. Ethereum's co-founder Mihai Alisi is extremely concerned that Facebook is attempting to hoodwink regulators into approving a centralized cryptocurrency. One of the main offshoots that Alice is worried about is censorship, more specifically transaction censorship determined by powerful corporations. This has implications on so many areas, from the economic to the political to the technological to surveillance and data privacy. Facebook is actively manipulating the behavior of people on a global scale. Perhaps most importantly, it requires our trust that Libra will eventually transition to a more permissionless, decentralized system, whereby anyone can validate a network rather than the restrictive member evaluation criteria keeping control in the hands of the initial 28 firms. And guys, this is what I mentioned before. I get it. Facebook and Libra are bringing a huge awareness to this industry, and I think that's great, but in terms of the actual cryptocurrency, I'm never gonna use it. I don't trust Facebook, and if it's about using a centralized currency, I might as well continue using the fiat. There's no point of using cryptocurrencies if it's centralized in this manner. Well, in any case guys, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, and only if you did, mind subscribing and also push that like button. Guys, please let me know if you would like to see more content. I gave this idea about this potential podcast. I think it's very important, more for trading, talking about psychology, talking more about the behind the scenes about trading, because I told you before, it can be really overwhelming, and I think a lot of the channels, they're just selling the technical analysis like if it's the whole story. It's not. I actually feel it's less than 50%, way less. I think 90% of trading is about psychology, so I really want to talk more about this in the future videos. So if you're interested about that, potentially we could do this with this podcast. We could bring some other topics, we could bring more discussion about this. I could really tell you about my experience, how I have failed so many times, and how I felt, and how I'm actually learning about that. But in any case guys, let me know down in the comments, also in the poll that I put previously in the video. And just before I go, I would like to remind you, just as usual, stay smart, stay bold, but most important of all, stay cheeky. Take care guys.